Hi. So the question tonight, why are football fans so thick? Now, before you get on Twitter and Facebook and start slagging me off, I'm a football fan, but I reckon I'm thick too. Why? Because we get ripped off by the beautiful game and we get excited and we never learn a lesson. I'm just amazed that so many women are getting into football because normally they're much more intelligent than men, but they've become as bad as men for a product that isn't really worth getting excited about. Is it? You tell me. Why are football fans so thick? We're so excited at Coventry. Well, I'm not, but we're so excited at Coventry City. We have a chairman who came in a couple of years ago. He has just recently sacked our most successful manager, you could argue, ever, Mark Robins. Did he have a replacement lined up? Did he buggery? You know, normally they go, oh, yeah, the manager's got the complete confidence of the board. Well, the board is only one person, really. This guy called Doug King, who's a rapeseed oil manufacturer or something, came out of nowhere, right? He's done good for the club because he has put some money in. But he now thinks, well, I think he thinks he's now in charge of the team. He's Hugo Ego. What these business people don't realise is they're just custodians of a football club. A football club has a rich history and a culture and a connection to its community. Anyway, he sacked Mark Robins. He's just today appointed Frankie Lampard. And everybody, you'd think it was the second coming. Everyone's gone about Super Frankie, Sky Blue Army. What's he achieved as a manager? He was a great player, a great midfielder for England. Of course he was, just like his dad, who, by the way, I've met. I'll tell you about him in a moment. So you've got the fact that he's a great player, but his managerial or coaching record isn't that hot. And may I just say to Sky Blue fans, and don't worry, this isn't just about Coventry, it's about football in general and about men. His record is not as good as Mark Robins. Now, Mark Robins has had a bad start. My mate Dave, who's a massive Sky Blue fan, he says, never panic with Coventry. We don't start playing till Halloween. Well, it was just Halloween a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? So he wasn't panicking. Mark Robins got the sack. Doug thinks he knows better than Mark, who's been brought up in football. And don't forget, Mark Robins was a pretty damn good player himself. So we've got a scenario where we've been managerless for 3 weeks. Doug King had to front up to the fans in a fans forum, and he basically threw Mark under the bus. He said it was him who dismantled the system, etc., and like gullible seals waiting for fish to be thrown to them at SeaWorld, the fans and the press lapped it up. Oh, yeah, well, if Mark did that, and I just put up on Twitter, hold on a minute, how do we know that's the truth? We need Mark's side of the argument. But of course, he can't give his side of the argument because he'll be under an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, or sorting out his exit strategy, won't he? His payoff. And who can blame him? He had a contract in place. So we've only got the chairman's word. Now, forgive me, Mark's been there 7.5 years. Doug King, the chairman, the rapeseed oil man, he's only been there a couple of years. The success is down to Mark Robins' football skill and experience. He has had a bad start to this season. No two ways about it. But, as I say, he, the chairman, has this meeting, basically says to them, it's all Mark Robins' fault, and they all agree. So then we've been waiting for Frank Lampard to turn up. Today, he's unveiled to the public. And as I say, all the headlines are Super Frank. And one guy said to me, it's a happy Franksgiving, because it's Thanksgiving Day. And I replied and got a load of flack for it. Well, I hope Frank Lampard doesn't turn out to be a turkey, because, of course, that's what they eat. But you see, I'm not against Frank Lampard. What I'm against is this whole idea of the way the fans are manipulated. And not just the fans, the way the fans themselves, people like you and me, manipulate ourselves. We almost self-exploit. Football is this massive, massive business now. And the ordinary fan doesn't come into it. You've not even got any real economic power anymore. Even if you support, well, especially if you support one of the big clubs like Man U, somebody like that. I almost said the Villa then. But you understand where I'm coming from. You have no real power. Because if you decide not to buy a season ticket, especially for one of the big clubs, they'll just sell it to one of the Volleyball brigade. There's enough people who will take it. Already, dads and mums can't afford to take their kids to the football, not just top Premiership, but through the leagues, because it's too much. It's too expensive. And they don't actually need your money. This is the perverse thing about it. Lower levels, yes. But in the Premier League, they don't need your money. They've got the TV money. The only reason they need us fans there is to create some kind of atmosphere. Because in Italy, and this is a fact, right? In Italy, they turned the fans against it. So the fans stopped going. Therefore, it wasn't as good on TV. You know, when they sort of run to the corner flag and drop to their knees and the fans go mad and everyone's screaming and the cameras can cut away and Sky can make a big issue of it. Imagine if there's nobody there. I mean, during COVID, when they were playing with no fans, what happened? The games were shit, weren't they? That's the bottom line. You need the fans, but business, the people who run football, think you don't. And they treat you like SH1T. Right from the prices they charge for you to go in, right? And I'm not having to go at any particular club. I'm just saying that football is eating itself. And what's going to happen is something similar to Italy. More and more foreign players coming in, less and less connection with the fans. And then when somebody with the loyalty of Mark Robins, 7.5 years, all the promotions he's got us and the excitement he's brought to the city, arguably, as I say, the best manager Coventry ever had. You got to put him up there with Jimmy Hill. You got to put him up there with George Curtis and John Sillett. Although, you know, their record, they won the FA Cup in 87. I was there. Great. But it's kind of not even on the same par as Robins there. By the way, I just saw my old ticket. I've got a photo on my phone of it. I've got it in my living room. £6 it cost to go to Wembley. £6 when Coventry won the FA Cup 1987. And I'm still in love with Gary Mabbott. Because if it hadn't come off Gary Mabbott's knees, we wouldn't have won, would we? What a game. We're all shouting abuse at Fairbrother. The Fairbrother? Can't remember his name. You know the guy who got the diving header. Shouting out like true football fans, you're a donkey, get him off. And then suddenly out of nowhere, he does that header, the diving header, one of the greatest goals in an FA Cup final. And then we love him. And then he's a hero. And that's what football does, you see. It's this emotional, cathartic release. That's why it is a working class game. You work hard all week, go to the football, and you want to shout and bawl and have all the emotions of a Greek tragedy, which is why I agree there's no place for racism in football. But when they start putting up signs saying don't swear, it's like, right? You've worked all week. These people are being paid a fortune, even at Coventry City. I reserve the right to call them an effing donkey if I want. And I think most football fans think that's part of the gladiatorial atmosphere, not racism or homophobia. Hear what I'm saying? But you've got a right to say, look at Coventry. Our players haven't been playing. They haven't been playing for Mark Robins. And then we're told, oh, no, they're at the peak of their physical performance because they've now got a sports scientist who's telling them what to eat and what not to eat. I don't think so. I think in the old days, like when Alan Brazil played for Coventry and he was in the Phoenix or the Festival pub beforehand, maybe we were better then. There was certainly, maybe there was more passion when football was like that. You know, we can go back in rose-tinted spectacles, you know, when players got the bus to go to the game. Can't do that in Coventry now because it's an out-of-town stadium. And it takes you about 3 hours to get back in. Football is eating itself because they've made it nice and clean and sterile and antiseptic so that business people will buy the tickets, but they're not really that interested in the ordinary fans, apart from they can't recruit. They've tried to recreate the sound of the fans, but they can't do it. So they do need some proper fans in the stadium. But you're almost cannon fodder. They don't really like you. You're an inconvenience. Look at the way you're herded at the end of games. It's almost back to the 70s where you're escorted through towns. I'm right, aren't I? You know, when Yobbos used to throw the Kung Fu stars. See, I can go far back. I can even remember at Highfield Road, what a stadium that was, when people used to chuck bananas at black players. Disgusting, filthy racism. And they even did it when we had black players in our own team. But they wouldn't throw him out. Oh, no, he's all right. He's the right kind of black. He plays for us. Absolute disgrace. And it was tolerated then. Now it won't be, and it shouldn't be. The point I'm trying to make, though, is the fans are just cannon fodder, and we fall for it. So we buy a season ticket. Coventry pulled off a great one. When they had that good season about a year ago, they then said, look, we want to go Operation Premier. Do you want to help us? Buy some tickets in advance. Well, that's fine as a marketing thing, but then you've got to try and do it, haven't you, and achieve it. Mark Robbins was working at that. Our chairman obviously got impatient. Now, people say, well, it's his club. He's got a right to sack whoever he wants. Well, see, I'm not sure about that. I think you have to take the fan. I'm old-fashioned enough to think you have to take the fans with you. If you're the chairman of a club, you are just a custodian. Look what's happened with the Glaziers at Man U and Radcliffe there as well. On the biggest scale, when it becomes that corporate where it's owned by a company. Oh, no, we've got football clubs now owned by countries. So you have Abu Dhabi playing Qatar. You know who I'm talking about. And look how the wheels have come off the bus of even playing teams like Manchester City with their losses recently. Football is eating itself, and we're thick because we're part of it. I don't know how we change it, but like, why do people buy those shirts every year? Coventry, I've got to take my hat off to them. They've become brilliant. They've even got a black kit now, which is like all the kits, the replica kits over the years, but blacked out. I don't get it, but people are buying them because people want to support the club. Then you get in there and it's overpriced. I won't say watered down because I'm sure it's not, but it's a bit like the special songs. And the beer tastes just like piss. Nightclub, yeah, the song. Do you know what I mean? The beer's awful. The actual entertainment side of things, you know, the ancillary things that go with it are dreadful. There are some clubs in the country where they do great pies, you know, the Balti pie and the rest of it. But sometimes they just feel you're being ripped off, herded in, herded out. You're just there to put your thumbs down or your thumbs up like in a gladiatorial contest. And I think it's wrong. And then we come to the TV rights, because as I just said, you can't even say, you know, like a working man. I always say that a man should have or woman should have the right to take away their labour, to go on strike. Of course they should. But I think it's the same with football. You should have the right to say, well, I don't like the way the team are playing, I ain't going to go anymore. But you can't really do that, especially when you get in the Premier, because there's loads of other people who have the ticket off you, or they don't even need the ticket money. You know, Man U fans who think they're doing their bit for the club because they're buying a shirt. They don't need your money, because there's loads of twats over in Thailand or China who are buying the replica shirts anyway. Or they've got the TV money, massive TV money, which of course is inflated the wages of the players. Now, don't get me wrong, Jimmy Hill, God rest his soul, he's the guy who got rid of the minimum wage for footballers. And they do deserve to earn a good wage, a very good wage. And they do deserve a right to have some of the rights, you know, to their name on their shirts, you know, like Beckham and the rest of them, because that's what basketball players do. And when people go, oh, look how much they're earning. Well, compare that to a basketball player or compare it to a film star. They are the stars. They are the product. What I'm saying is, though, we, the fans, are part of that product as well. And when I listened to this forum the other night where the chairman of Coventry explained what happened with Robbins, loads of people thought that he did a good job. I thought it was disgraceful because I didn't think he answered the questions. He doesn't have to because he owns it. But I think he does, doesn't he? If you want to, Coventry, again, one of the first clubs ever under Jimmy Hill to really promote the idea of community, the Sky Blue song, the tickets for the kids. But that's kind of disappeared. And I think that's a sadness. I mean, I'm not saying let's go back to turnstiles. Remember when there was turnstiles and you see helicopters go over the ground because they were checking that the amount of people they said they had in that day kind of roughly matched the photos they were taking from the helicopter. Well, it was a cash business. That's why there was the brown envelopes. That's why the Clough allegations and all the rest of it came from. Just talking about Brian Clough for a moment and thinking about him as well today, I've had all these thoughts in my head. Do you think he'd tolerate? Our chairman has just said, we don't want a manager. We need a coach because we've got a performance director. It's some woman called Dr. Claire, right? So she's the performance director. We've got all these coaches. We had 7 coaches. We were laughing about this. There were more coaches in the dugout last season, and I'm pretty sure Mark Robbins wasn't happy about this. There were more coaches than in a Blackpool coach park. Let me tell you, during the illuminations, it was ludicrous. But this idea now, oh, yeah, we need this person, that person, sports therapy. Do you? I don't know. I'm not a sportsman or an elite sportsman, obviously. But this idea, no, we don't want a manager, we want a coach. We've got a board, a team who are in charge of recruiting. And all of this, I think, is under why Mark Robbins wasn't happy, why his assistant left. I mean, I don't know, but I just don't think that's football. So Frank Lampard, it's taken 3 weeks to get him in because Doug King, the chairman, said, oh, no, he's not. I'm not going to allow any man be the manager. They can be the team coach, first team coach. We've got a recruitment team. We've got the fitness, We've got the executives to run the business side of it, all of which I understand, take it away from the manager. But in the end, it's got to be the manager's team that plays, hasn't it? And the book has got to stop with him, especially if you're going to sack him after 1 year of a 4-year contract. But I'm not really getting it, Coventry. Coventry is just symptomatic of what football's become. And I think we fans want blood and guts. When I lived in Edinburgh 20 odd years ago, I used to go and watch, I was living in Livingston, but it was before Livingston had a football team. I used to go and see Motherwell play, and the scores were always something like 4-3 or 5-2. And it was blood and guts and thunder, real hard football, proper football. We haven't got that anymore, have we? It's all pouncing around. Oh, he slightly touched him. I'm sure he farted as he ran past him. That's a red card. Get him off, whatever. It's just nonsense. Talking of Frank Lampard, I was thinking about Frankie Lampard, his dad, and Alvin Martin. I worked with them at Talk Sport. Lovely blokes. But I was in awe of Frank Lampard Sr. He seemed to always be on, what's it called, Sports Night? Tuesday night, Wednesday night on the BBC. And it was always there at Upton Park, and it was always raining, and they had the long hair, and it was all kind of greasy and wet. And they played, as I say, with blood and thunder. It's when we had grounds like Highfield Road, the baseball ground, the Dell. It was when there were grounds where the fans were so close to the football, you could almost hear them breathe or fart. That was real football. Now we've got these super stadiums. And West Ham's a great example. Have you been to the Olympic Stadium? You're miles away from it. It's that kind of European football we used to see. You know what I mean? Big stadiums with running tracks around them. That isn't football. So going back to Motherwell, that's what I loved about it. Blood and guts and thunder and spits and broken legs, probably. I don't know. But that's football where you can actually smell the liniment oil or whatever it's called, isn't it? Or is this all sounding a bit homoerotic? But Frank Lampard Sr. summed that up. He was brilliant. I mean, I remember with Frank Lampard, I met him years later when I was on Talk Sport. Like I say, we went to a place called Langan's. Me, Brazil, I don't know where Parry was there. There's a load of people there anyway. And it's like a posh bistro, this place, right, in London. Very nice, very nice. So we're there. And I used to have a beautiful watch. Used to when I had money. I had an Amiga Seamaster watch. It was the business, right? And Brazil hated it because so Brazil's going, oh, your watch, yeah. And I used to say to him, what's your problem, medicine ballhead? It's my watch. It's my money. I'll spend it how I want. You can go and spend yours on whatever you drink, yeah? Anyway, so he's going on and on and on. And then he's saying, oh, Frank Lampard's coming later. Frank will be in later. I said, oh, great. I said to one of the other lads, I said, one of the sycophants around Brazil. I said, he's my hero. And I said that kind of story about watching on a Tuesday or Wednesday on Sports Night, and it was always raining. And then Frank Lampard came in. Brazil goes, oh, Frank, because he obviously knew him because he played football with him or against him. And he ignored him. And he just went over and he said, to me, this was an unbelievable. This is the kid from the raggy-arsed end of Radford. He goes, are you Gaunty? I said, yeah, I am, Frank. He said, oh, I love your show. And I basically went, oh, thanks. He gave me a hug. And I put one finger up like that to Brazil from behind my back. Then he said, oh, that watch. He said, that's a beautiful watch. It couldn't have been scripted better, right? Brazil's medicine ball head. Now he looked like a slapped arse, like a big fat, bulbous, fat arse, because he was so pissed off that Frank Lampard had actually spoken to me. Because I was a bit of an outlier there, because I wasn't there to do football. I was there to do kind of politics and stuff, wasn't I? Mid-morning, 10 till 1. And it was kind of, we had these handovers, which were fun. They were legendary with Brazil. And people said to me, did you script them? It was no. I used to go in. He used to be half pissed or completely hungover. It would smell like a Bavarian brothel in there with the smell of last night's alcohol. And then he would start. And sometimes he was really funny, much quicker than me. But most times he wasn't because he'd had a drink, right? He'd had a drink. And you can sue me if you want. This is a fact. I'm not making this up. But let me tell you something about Alan Brazil. He is very talented. He was a good footballer. He wasn't very good by the time he came to Coventry, but he was a very, very good footballer. And to be good at two things in life is tremendous. And he was great at football and absolutely brilliant, outstanding at drinking. No, I'm joking. As a broadcaster, he was a brilliant, and he is. I don't know, I've not heard him for years, but he was a brilliant broadcaster and a brilliant footballer. Not a very nice person, in my opinion, in my dealings with him, but that's by the by. So Brazil's there. So he looks like a smacked ass. And I'll tell you what it was. Frank Lampard's wife had just passed away a few weeks previously. And I'm not sure if it was that occasion or another one. His son came in. So I've actually when I say I've met him, I've been in the same table, the same company as Frank Lampard. And I think Frank Lampard Jr. was a great midfield footballer. But he hasn't yet proved himself. And so I wouldn't have swapped Mark Robbins, who's a very, very good footballer and an experienced manager, for him. But Frank's come as a coach. And there was all this bullshit about he's not going to come and bring his own people. I thought, oh, yeah, we'll see. 3 weeks later, guess what? He's come with two of his coaches who he wants. And now Georgie Boateng, who's just been brought in, who was a bit of a hero for Coventry, went off until he went to play for Villa, like most of them do. He's just been released today. It's a nasty, cutthroat business. It's nearly as nasty as radio and entertainment, isn't it? But what I'm trying to get at here, so I was like an outlier because I wasn't, I was into football and I like my football and I like Coventry. And obviously, once you're working on Talksport, you get lots of access to other games. But I used to go home sometimes and say to Lisa, I don't know, I'd rather just do pure politics. I don't really. And she said, how much longer? I always remember was it the World Cup when he did his metatarsals, Wayne Rooney? And I went home one night and Lisa said to me, how much longer are you going to talk about Wayne Rooney's toes or, metatarsals on your show? I said, well, I would like to never talk about them again. I said, but that's what the audience want, because it is what the fans wanted. It's odd. It's a really odd thing. And also, I didn't really understand, if I'm honest now and critical of myself, how important it was in people's lives. I used to love going to the football. But then I'd be a bit depressed if we lost and a bit fed up. Not depressed, because that's an abuse of that word or that term. But it wasn't the end of the world for me. But then I realised, after I left TalkSport, that for many people it was. In the famous line from Bill Shankly, football's much more important than politics or whatever it was. He's right and I was wrong. And I never realised, because later in my life, I met loads of people and they all say, oh, did you enjoy Talksport? What's Alan Brazil like? They all wanted to know what he was like or whoever it was like. And it was kind of odd, because football's just ingrained into our lives, isn't it? But I just think football now is just almost a joke. Almost a joke. So all the fans in Coventry now, well, not all of them, but a lot of them think the saviour's arrived. Now, I very much doubt that Frank Lampard is the saviour. And if he does well, and I hope he does, he will go on to a bigger club than Coventry City. Nature of the game. But what I'm most angry about is that fans aren't listened to. We have no power. Zero power. As I say, because you don't buy a season ticket at a big club, they'll sell it to somebody else. And then they want to diminutize our contribution. They don't really want us there, shouting and bawling and screaming and making the atmosphere. If they could do that with AI, they bloody would. And they'd never have another fan there again. But to me, that's what makes the atmosphere. That's what makes football, or British football, isn't it? And then, I'm going to finish in a minute. I just had to get this off my chest today. I just feel it's kind of it's a bit like going to the pub every night, isn't it? The brewery doesn't care. You die, somebody else will be in your stool or standing at the bar the next day. It's a weird relationship both in pubs with the landlord drinking and going to a football game and being a fan. Oh, yeah, I'm a Coventry fan. Recently, because I've dared to criticise the chairman, I've had these mini-me's, basically having a go at me. Who are you, you fat cunt? How dare you say that? How do you know? And I said, like, no, it's an opinion. It's an opinion. It's a different opinion to yours because your opinion is just exactly what the chairman's told you. And so when I say, hold on a minute, he might not be telling, I don't know if he is or not. He might not be telling the whole truth because we haven't heard Mark Robbins' side of the story. It's almost like you're committing blasphemy. But this guy who's the chairman's only been there two and a bit years, and he'll be gone soon, probably, because that's what happens. Somebody else will become the custodian. And I just think, why do we get so wrapped up? And it's like now, even now, I want them to win against Cardiff. Of course I want them to win. And I'll be fed up if they don't win. But it's the way it gets into your body, into your bones. And even when I used to go corporate in later life, when I became more successful, and I've been in the boardroom at Coventry many occasions because I was on Talk Sport or because I was doing stuff afterwards. People knew me, right? I even opened one of the rooms at the Ricoh Stadium, or whatever it's called now, the CBS Arena, the Jaguar Suite, because I was sort of sponsored by Jaguar. There used to be a plaque. I don't think it's there now. There was a plaque on the wall saying opened by radio and TV personality John Gaunt. People would go, who? But that's it. So, and I've been in the prawn vol au vent section. And I was in the director's box at Coventry City only last season. But I don't go up all the time now, especially when I've been skint. I can't afford to go to the football on £90 a week, job seekers allowance, when I was on the dole. Just couldn't afford it. I still followed them, still interested, still wanted to see them, still watch them on telly at somebody's house or in a pub if they had a stick, if you understand what I mean. Not that I condone that behaviour, but then I find that odd as well. We're getting people now sent to prison for using a stick and watching games from Sky. I know it's wrong and copyright and all the rest of it, but they get sent down for 5 or 6 years. 5 or 6 years, whereas the guy who groomed the Manchester Arena bomber, Adidi, he has just been released from prison. It's bonkers. This world is bonkers. But you see, that's capitalism. Oh, a little bit of politics. If you steal property or money, you will always get punished heavier. That's why rapists and child abuse, the best ones, paedophiles. Look at that piece of scum, that piece of slime. Hugh Edwards. He had the most severe category of child pictures, babies being violated. Yeah? Violated, penetrated. So you understand where I'm coming from. Did he go to prison? No. Did he commentate on the Queen's death? Yes. Will he come back? Probably not. But he kept his 300,000, 200,000, whatever it was, payoff from the BBC and his huge gold-plated pension. Why? Oh, because his crime within the world seems to be less heinous than somebody who might give you a stick in a pub and ask for 40 quid for it and to allow you to watch Netflix or Sky or the football or whatever. Something wrong there, isn't there? Something wrong. Not that I'm condoning it. I'm just saying, isn't that bizarre? That is bizarre. And Hugh Edwards wasn't the only one, was he? There's been loads of them recently. The Sun have been exposing them. Nearly every day there's another pedo being let off. It's just, our values are wrong. Sorry, I've gone off on a political bit. So pull it back to the football. I just wonder, are we thick? And when I say are all football fans, I'm talking about myself as well. Although I don't think I'm a football fan in the same sense. Somebody said, you're not a real fan because you don't come every week. Well, I was speaking to a really nice guy in the pub the other night. He does go every week. He's a bit younger than me, but not much. And he goes away as well. And I said, oh, what's that like nowadays? Because I haven't been away for years, unless it was corporate. And then he says, oh, yeah, it's great. He says, apart from, when you get to our age, Gaunty, he said, you spend most of the time on the way back standing up on the coach. I said, why? Not enough seats? He says, no, dying for a piss. And he said, you have to get in the queue on the coach. And to me, that's my idea of hell. I think I've only just recovered from when I went to see Coventry to winning the FA Cup in '87, and everyone was pissing on the terraces, and the whole thing was jumping up and down. Were you there? Were you there? It's before the seats. When I went to Wembley a few years later, when I was on Talk Sport or whatever, and you go to that Wembley Premier Club and the rest of it, and you can actually take big buckets of Coke, can't you, and popcorn, and sit there, and you sit in these lovely chairs. Well, it's nice, but it's not football, is it, in the same sense? And so I'm not saying let's return to rattles and players on the bus and the rest of it, but there's something, we've lost something in football. And I think what it is the fans, dare I say it, they've lost ownership of their club. You know, and it's brilliant in Coventry at the moment because loads of kids now are wearing the Coventry shirt, whereas a few years ago, they were wearing the Man U one or the Villa, etc., etc. It's great to see a pride. And football can bring, that's one of the positive things. It can bring a real pride and a sense of identity to a city. It can go a bit far the other way. It can become tribalism, of course, and stuff that you don't want to see. But that's what football can do. It can unite communities. I saw this in Luton when I worked there, and that was great. It's like what I was talking about yesterday. Luton, when they tried to close down the Vauxhall, we managed to argue against that and do that brilliant broadcast, which I won all those awards for, because people were united. Most people worked at Vauxhall. They went to Kenilworth Road. Now, that is a proper stadium, although they're getting a new one built as well, aren't they? And there's great things about proper stadiums, you know, safer, more toilets, etc., etc. But it's what happens on that green. But when I used to go corporate, that's what I wanted to say. I was talking to my mate Phil about this today. I stopped going. I used to love going. I'll go in somebody else's box or my own box or have a joint box. And then got to a point, you know, they got the telly in there. They bring the food into you. But then it got to a point where the day was great. We'd have a few drinks beforehand in a grotty little pub. Then we'd have the entertainment, the corporate entertainment, the food. Then we'd have great drinks afterwards and maybe go to the casino. But there was just this bit in the middle that happened out on that green thing, the pitch, which was crap. That's when Coventry were terrible, right? And I just got to a point where, why am I spending all this money? Why am I spaffing all this money? And Phil was saying this to me as well. Up the wall. Why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? Can't I spend that money in a better way? And also, many of the guys used to come there, they'd stay in watching the racing or the results show with Jeff. Met him, he's a nice bloke, Jeff Stelling. They'd stay inside watching that rather than the game that's outside. So there's advantages and disadvantages the way that football has developed. But I guess what I'm basically saying is I'd like a return a little bit to basics. And what I'd want is for the clubs to understand how important the fans are. I know there's certain things that chairman can't say and et cetera, but it's all become a bit corporate, hasn't it? And then Sky, the prices they charge if you want to see the games. And then could I even say there's too much football on the telly? And the one thing I want to finish on, I hate the way that Sky, it's now Amazon, isn't it, as well, and the other big corporations have made football start at 12:30 or 11:30 or suddenly change the day. So you're going to go with your lad on a Saturday and suddenly they say, oh no, we're going to play that on a Tuesday. Why? TV. TV. Well, fuck TV. It's about the fans. I've got mates who can't say, look, I've got toddlers, 5, 6-year-olds. I can't take them to a game that starts. The best one was Burnley. Was it 8:15 the other night? How can you take a kid to that if they're still at school? You can't. That's robbing the punters, the people who give football its unique atmosphere and its uniqueness. Yeah, it's kind of intrinsic value. But that's what's happened. And that's down to the football authorities and it's down to the big corporations who are willing to pay that money. And don't get me wrong, Jimmy Hill, as I said earlier, footballers deserve a good whack, a massive good whack. I've never been jealous of a footballer earning tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds, even a week. I don't care if they're good at their job. And it's a short career. And I understand all the arguments and the rights that they've got, etc., etc. But what I do want, whether they're paid 100 grand a week or less than £1,000 a week, when they pull on that jersey, I want them to play. And I've got to say this, at Coventry City, this season, there's been too many times when they haven't played And again, that's them stealing, just as bad as Sky or the big companies or the clubs themselves. That's stealing a living out of us, the thick fans. If you think I'm being a bit too harsh, please get in touch. I'm on Twitter. It's John Gaunt, Jongaunt. Get me on Facebook as well. Same name there. You can also send me an email, john@johngaunt.com. Send all your hate mail. If you are going to write it in a green pen, be polite. Well, polite as possible. And my name is Gaunt, Gaunt, not CUN. Anyway, you got it. And if you want to help me out, because I'm doing this totally off my own back, you could buy me a coffee. It's a way of raising money to keep these podcasts going. It's you see it on the screen now, www.buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt. And if you're saying, what do you mean on the screen? Well, I've now put these on YouTube, so you can now get these podcasts either as audio only on Apple and all the rest of the places, or Spotify, or you can go to John Gaunt TV on YouTube and see me in glorious Technicolor, right? And then you'll know what I look like if you want to throw a dart at me. I just want football. I just want football to somehow return to the fans just a little bit. Just a little bit. And I want us to, like the super Lampard nonsense that's coming out today. He doesn't walk on water. Some people would say his dad does or did when he played. But I'm not sure that Frank, as a footballer, great footballer, as I say, but he's not a great manager yet. He hasn't taken us to the promised land. Whereas, dare I say it, Mark Robins has. And for one, we could have been in the FA Cup final. Things would have been different against Man U. We were cheated. You know, that was money talking as well. That's another prime example. Anyway, I'm rambling on. I do apologise. My name's John Gaunt. Buy me a coffee if you fancy it, if you think I'm any good. Also, as well, spread the word. Even if you don't like it, please share the video or share the audio to say, he's a winker, or whatever you want to call me. All right, until next time, if you've got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Hey, don't forget to keep telling them that you love them. I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This has been the John Gaunt Show.